They herded us into the grand salon as if it were a holiday feast, the kind where anticipation crackled in the air. But no ribbons or bows awaited. Instead, my mother distributed thick envelopes containing estate papers totaling $31 million. Quincy, my elder brother, received the keys to the pharmaceutical empire. Bridget, my sister, was bestowed the sprawling lakeside estate. Even Dustin, the baby of the family, walked away with a trio of high-end automobiles. Then Mother fixed her gaze on me, and the sentence she uttered obliterated the foundation of my 32-year existence. I'm Roland, and I have to recount that afternoon because it rewrote every chapter of my story. The figures in that chamber weren't outsiders. They were the constants of my daily routine, etched into my memory from countless shared meals. Mother, Patricia, adorned in her ever-present pearl strand and that reserved midnight blue gown for milestone events. Father, Gordon, fidgeting with his spectacles in that telltale sign of unease. Quincy, already glued to market fluctuations on his device amid what should have been sacred family time. Bridget, impeccably poised beside her spouse Thomas, and Dustin, unusually subdued without his trademark quips. The summons had arrived precisely 3 weeks prior, non-negotiable, in Patricia's commanding timbre, March 15th, 2 p.m. on the dot. Vital Thornfield matters demand your presence. I'd motored in from Milwaukee that dawn, entrusting my animal clinic to the team. The journey north had me convinced this convened around Father's recent cardiac flutter. Mild, yet alarming enough to rattle the clan. Retirement loomed, I assumed, perhaps formalizing Quincy's de facto control over the distribution conglomerate he'd steered for half a decade. Our ancestral domain sprawled across 40 pristine acres in Lake Forest, an enclave of inherited wealth where entrances bore titles and residences echoed with generational whispers. I'd raced these corridors as a boy, clandestinely gliding along the polished oak railings under Patricia's watchful eye, erecting makeshift strongholds with my brothers and sister in the vast library that now served as our assembly hall. "Darlings," Patricia intoned, the sunlight glinting off her jewels as she positioned herself behind Father's armchair, palms pressed firmly against the supple hide like a monarch addressing courtiers. "Gordon's brush with mortality has compelled us to safeguard our lineage's future. Countless hours with counsel have yielded these airtight provisions." With a vigor defying her 70-plus years, she circled the antique desk, dispensing the embossed folders, each bearing the Thornfield insignia in gleaming aureate script. Quincy claimed his promptly, followed by Bridget, then Dustin. As she approached me, a fleeting pause betrayed a shadow in her stare. I mistook it for sentimental reluctance over asset division. How profoundly mistaken. Quincy unsealed his first, his brows arching as a low exhale escaped. "This is beyond bountiful, parents," he murmured, poring over the clauses. "The full enterprise? You're certain?" Bridget's sharp intake of breath followed suit upon revealing hers. "The estate here? You've cherished this haven." "We'll retain the southern retreat," Gordon interjected, his inaugural words since our arrival, voice steady yet distant. "These northern chills grow burdensome in our twilight." Dustin rifled through his allotment, stunned. The opulent sedan, the sleek Italian speedster, and the classic American muscle car. "But Father, that roadster, you rebuilt it frame by frame." "Legacy must flow onward," Gordon replied, his focus locked on some invisible horizon beyond my shoulder. My envelope yielded one crisp page, a bank draft for $50,000, and a concise missive on official stationery. "In gratitude for your time among us." The atmosphere thickened into a vacuum. Only the antique timepiece in the corridor pierced the hush, its pendulum swinging like a metronome to my unraveling world. I scrutinized the letter repeatedly, convinced additional folios lurked elsewhere. The substantive bequest, the rationale to restore coherence. "This can't be right," I uttered, my tone alien, detached. A clerical error, another packet incoming. Patricia's demeanor shifted into uncharted territory. Across 3 decades of addressing her as mother, of observing her orchestrate fundraisers and horticultural soirees with effortless poise navigating societal tempests with unflappable elegance, I'd never witnessed this icy detachment akin to a physician relaying terminal news to a fleeting acquaintance. "Roland," she pronounced, the syllable devoid of its lifelong tenderness, clinical as a scalpel. A revelation long withheld, deemed merciful in silence, now necessitates disclosure amid these formalities. My kin's attentions converged. Quincy lowered his documents. Bridget clutched Thomas's sleeve. Dustin shrank as if willing the upholstery to engulf him. "You joined our fold at 3 months via private arrangement," Patricia proceeded, each phrase calibrated for precision. "Your originator, an adolescent unprepared for parenthood, relinquished you. We afforded you parity with our own flesh. Elite academies, equivalent prospects, identical privileges. Yet the trust's stipulations are ironclad, solely for those of direct descent." The clock tolled thrice, etching the instant my identity fractured irreparably. I'd embodied the archetype of privileged upbringing, exclusive institutions where lineage preceded introduction, leisure clubs unlocking elite gateways, weekly banquets at the expansive oak table regaling Quincy's corporate triumphs or Bridget's philanthropic spectacles. Roland Thornfield, the intermediary son who defied convention to pursue veterinary medicine over the corporate throne, admired for charting an independent course. But that illusion evaporated. The drive home blurred into a haze of interstate lights, my mind replaying fragments, the adoption agency's sealed files, the biological mother's anonymity, the legal barriers erected generations ago by some shrewd ancestor wary of dilution. 50,000. A pittance against the millions dispersed. A polite severance for services rendered in the charade of kinship. Days blurred into sleepless nights in my modest Milwaukee apartment, far removed from the manicured lawns of Lake Forest. I pored over public records, cross-referencing dates, until a faded birth certificate surfaced online through a genealogy site. Roland Hayes, born to a 16-year-old named Emily Hayes in a Chicago suburb. No Thornfield anywhere. The veterinary practice suffered. Patients waited longer as I fixated on this ghost of a past. Quincy called once, awkward pleasantries about board meetings. Bridget sent a floral arrangement with a card. "We're still family in heart." Dustin texted memes, then nothing. Patricia and Gordon remained silent, perhaps relieved the secret was interred with the revelation. I confronted the agency, armed with the check as leverage. The director, elderly and reticent, confirmed the private deal. A substantial donation from the Thornfields ensured discretion. Emily had signed away rights, vanished into obscurity, perhaps married, perhaps not. No forwarding trail. The money sat untouched, a mocking emblem. I expanded the clinic instead, hiring specialists, extending hours for low-income pet owners. Animals didn't discern bloodlines. They offered loyalty without caveats. Months later, an unmarked envelope arrived. A photograph of a woman in her late 40s, resemblance uncanny. My eyes, my jawline. On the reverse, "I'm sorry I couldn't keep you. If you're reading this, they told you. I'd like to meet, if you're open. No pressure. E.H." The salon gathering had dismantled my world, but this fragile bridge hinted at reconstruction. Not as a Thornfield heir, but as Roland, veterinarian, survivor, seeker of authentic bonds. The clock's chimes echoed in memory, no longer a death knell, but a call to forge ahead. My veterinary clinic in the heart of Milwaukee had become the fulfillment of every ambition I'd nurtured since childhood. What started as a modest one-room operation 6 years earlier had blossomed into a comprehensive animal care center, and I'd just brought on my 10th staff member. On peak days, we handled 40 or more cases, with the after-hours emergencies pushing that number even higher. A regional paper had spotlighted us in an article called "The Veterinarian Who Refuses to Turn Away," highlighting my policy of providing care even when owners couldn't cover the costs. My practice manager, Sandra, would roll her eyes good-naturedly at my soft spot for strays and hard-luck cases, but there was always warmth in her voice. "Dr. Thornfield, you're cut from a different cloth," she'd remark while I lingered past closing to watch over shelter pups post-surgery or arrived unannounced on weekends to assess healing incisions. Your folks must be proud of the man they shaped. In those moments, the name Thornfield felt like a badge of honor, not the ostentatious kind my brother Quincy flaunted after sealing seven-figure contracts, but a grounded assurance that I was making a tangible difference for voiceless creatures while remaining tethered to a lineage of substance and endurance. Melanie, my partner, saw that core in me clearly. She poured her energy into teaching 5-year-olds at an under-resourced elementary school in a challenging part of the city, turning down offers from elite institutions that promised easier days and fatter paychecks. Our paths crossed 2 years back at a gala my mother had orchestrated for charitable causes. Melanie was there advocating for her students' need for safe outdoor play space. I attended because Patricia insisted on full family representation to uphold the Thornfield image. "You're not like the others in your circle," she told me over greasy cheeseburgers at a no-frills joint after we'd ditched the formal event. "There's refinement in you, but zero arrogance." Lately, our talks had turned serious, envisioning a shared life, committing to vows. She dreamed of a big family, 3 children, minimum. Having grown up amid the chaos of siblings, I agreed that one kid alone would feel incomplete. We'd cruise quiet suburbs on lazy afternoons, pointing out potential homes, debating backyard layouts for play structures or which sunny corner might cradle a crib someday. Ordinary aspirations, heartfelt ones, the kind I believed were built to last. Fridays meant ritual lunch with my father, Gordon, at his exclusive club. The corner booth with its panoramic view of manicured greens, the same server who'd memorized his preferences for 2 decades. He'd stick to his poached salmon. I'd opt for the turkey club. We'd skirt any mention of the empire he'd built, focusing instead on lighter ground. "Roland," he said during our most recent meal, just days before everything unraveled, fidgeting with his spectacles and that telltale anxious tick. "You've carved your own path, haven't you? Kinder than the rest, more authentic. That's your gift." I took it as praise for choosing medicine over mergers, for prioritizing lives over ledgers. "At least one Thornfield has a conscience," I'd joked inwardly. His chuckle came, but it lacked depth, his gaze drifting. The reason would soon crystallize. Patricia managed our family with the precision of the executive suite she'd left behind upon marriage. Schedules were sacred, customs served strategic ends, and each of us knew our assigned part. Her Sunday evening calls arrived like clockwork at 7 sharp. "Roland, dear," she'd said in the final one preceding the gathering, "mark next Saturday on your calendar. Your father and I have arranged something significant. The whole family must be present. The whole family." It rolled off her tongue as if it were the most ordinary truth. I carried her determination, or so people claimed. I mirrored Gordon's reflective demeanor. Vivid recollections anchored me, mastering 2 wheels on the sprawling estate pavement with Dad jogging alongside, Mom applauding from the porch. Holiday dawns when Quincy played at composure while Bridget, Dustin, and I dove into gift-wrap frenzy. A sense of security, of unbreakable bonds, of eternal belonging. How profoundly mistaken. March 15th etched itself into my soul. We convened in the estate's walnut-paneled library, the very space where Gordon first introduced me to night maneuvers on a carved board at age 7, where I'd crouched behind armchairs during tempests, where generations of holiday portraits captured our evolving clan. Quincy jetted in from Manhattan aboard the corporate aircraft, exuding boardroom authority in tailored finery. Bridget and her spouse Thomas made the trek from Chicago, her composure unflappable after the drive. Dustin's punctual, clear-headed arrival earned a rare maternal smile. "My dears," Patricia announced, poised behind Gordon's seat with elegant poise, "your father's brush with illness has compelled us to safeguard what we've built." She distributed embossed folders with flawless efficiency, flipping mine open to reveal nothing but a solitary check and a curt memorandum. The air grew frigid. "This can't be right," I murmured, throat tightening. "Is the rest misplaced? A clerical error?" The shift in Patricia was absolute, as if a switch had flipped. The nurturing figure who'd bandaged, scraped knees, sat vigil through fevers, beamed at my diploma ceremony evaporated. A cold impersonator occupied her features. "Roland, a long overdue confession. You joined our family at 3 months via adoption. Your biological mother, A young girl overwhelmed, relinquished you. We provided abundantly, yet the estate's provisions exclude non-blood heirs. The revelations landed like successive hammers. Adopted, infant, ineligible. 32 years reframed in seconds. Gordon glanced up fleetingly, eyes misty, then averted. We raised you with affection, truly, but the trust documents are unequivocal, lineage only. After all this time, my words escalated, fracturing. Now? Quincy fidgeted, throat clearing. This is madness, parents. Roland's family. Blood defines it, Patricia countered icily. You've benefited immensely, Roland. Elite schooling, privileges beyond most. Consider the enclosure your bridge forward, as if severing roots were a mere relocation. Bridget's tears fell silently, mascara holding firm. Heartless, she breathed. Thomas consoled her, face impassive. Complicit, I saw. You were all aware? My question swept the room. Patricia's jaw set in that familiar resolve. The truth surfaced at Quincy's majority. The disclosures kept cascading, each more lacerating than the last. They'd monitored my birth mother's circumstances for years, ensuring no claims surfaced, all while integrating me seamlessly into their world. Quincy admitted he'd wrestled with telling me during college but deferred to parental wisdom. Bridget confessed tearful late-night debates with Thomas about the ethics, yet silence prevailed to preserve harmony. Dustin, usually the wild card, hung his head and muttered apologies for his own complacency. Even the staff, our longtime housekeeper Maria, the groundskeeper who'd taught me to fish in the estate pond, had been sworn to secrecy decades ago. I rose unsteadily, the check crumpling in my fist. Memories assaulted me. Patricia teaching me to tie a Windsor knot before my first formal dance, Gordon slipping me extra allowance for veterinary textbooks, family vacations where I'd been the one photographing everyone else. All staged, calculated inclusions in a tableau of inheritance. What about the photos? The stories? My name on the holiday cards? Patricia's response was clinical. Traditions maintain appearances. You were cherished, but not heir. Cherished. The word tasted like ash. Pushing back from the table, I demanded space, storming into the adjoining conservatory where sunlight filtered through glass onto exotic plants Patricia imported annually. There, amid the humidity and greenery, the full weight crashed down. My clinic's success, Melanie's love, the life I'd architected, all suddenly unmoored from the foundation I'd assumed was granite. Would clients view me differently knowing I wasn't a true Thornfield scion? Would Melanie's dreams align with a man now adrift? Quincy followed, loosening his tie. Ro, this is bullshit. You're my brother, blood or not. I'll fight this. But his eyes betrayed conflict. The empire he'd helped expand hung in the balance. Bridget joined, dabbing her cheeks. We should have insisted they tell you sooner. Thomas lingered in the doorway, ever the observer. Dustin slouched against a potted palm, kicking at the tile. I always figured you'd inherit the lake house. Sorry, man. Gordon entered last, frail in his cardigan. Son, Roland, we thought shielding you was mercy. Your path diverged early. Veterinary medicine wasn't our world. This way, no expectations chained you. Mercy? The irony burned. Patricia remained in the library, composing herself for the next phase, perhaps drafting press statements to control the narrative. I left that day with the check untouched in my pocket, driving aimlessly through Milwaukee's familiar streets until dusk. Sandra texted about a critical case, a hit-by-car Labrador needing immediate surgery. Work called as always. Pulling into the clinic lot, I steeled myself. The animals didn't care about pedigrees or trusts. Melanie waited inside, having stopped by after school. One look at my face, and she pulled me into the empty exam room. Talk to me. As the story spilled out between us, the adoption, the disinheritance, the calculated deceptions, she listened without interruption, her hand steady on mine. Your family, the one that matters, is right here, she said finally, gesturing to the humming fluorescent lights, the distant barks from kennels. And whatever comes, we'll build our own legacy. 3 kids, swing set, the works. Blood doesn't dictate worth. That night, operating on the injured dog under bright lights, suturing fractures with precision born of years, a fragile clarity emerged. The Thornfield name had opened doors, yes, but my hands, my choices, my unrelenting compassion, those were mine alone. The estate could keep its vaults. I'd forge permanence in healed limbs and wagging tails. Yet as I scrubbed out at dawn, the ache lingered. Betrayal doesn't cauterize neatly. Questions swirled. Who was my birth mother? Did she ever wonder? And the siblings? Could bonds withstand this fracture? Weeks later, Quincy called with lawyer contacts, offering to contest the trust. Bridget sent care packages of childhood mementos, as if reclaiming shared history. Dustin showed up unannounced at the clinic, volunteering for kennel duty in silent atonement. Gordon left voicemails about discussing options, but Patricia's line stayed silent. Melanie and I house-hunted with renewed urgency, prioritizing lots big enough for future chaos. The newspaper ran a follow-up piece. Local vet faces personal storm, continues mission. Patients poured in, some leaving extra donations, for the doc who's been through it. Sandra organized a staff potluck, toasting resilience. In quiet moments, I'd trace the clinic's growth chart on the wall, from one room to thriving hub, and feel the shift. The dreams weren't shattered. They were refining, shedding inherited illusions for self-forged steel. Still, March 15th haunted. Some nights I'd wake reaching for phantom security, the estate's library morphing in dreams into a courtroom where blood tests determined destiny. But morning brought barking patience, Melanie's coffee, Sandra's eye rolls. The Thornfield legacy? It lived in my work now, redefined. And if 3 kids someday asked about Grandpa Gordon's club or Aunt Bridget's Chicago penthouse, I'd tell them the truth. Family isn't just given. Sometimes it's earned, one compassionate act at a time. The attorneys demanded that he be informed, as the firstborn and the one slated to inherit the company someday. We broke the news to Bridget the day she announced her engagement to Thomas, purely for the paperwork tied to her inheritance trust. Dustin found out the moment he hit 21. We extracted oaths of silence from each of them. Gordon's voice cracked when he added, "We genuinely believed it was the gentler path. You were content. Why shatter that illusion?" Gentler. The syllable escaped me like a bitter chuckle. You call a lifetime of deception gentler? Dustin's words scraped out, raw and low. This is insane. Roland yanked me out of the pool when I was 8 and drowning. He taught me stick shift in the back lot. He took the fall when I totaled Dad's Benz. Blood isn't the only glue that holds a family together. The statutes say otherwise. Patricia replied, ice in every consonant. And $50,000 is lavish when we were under no compulsion to offer a cent. My fingers trembled so hard I had to clasp them behind my back. The past rewound and rewrote itself in front of me. Every group photo where I puzzled over my darker hair and narrower shoulders. Every cocktail party where Patricia's introduction snagged for a heartbeat before she tacked my name onto the list. Every aunt or uncle who tilted their head and murmured that I must favor some obscure great-grandparent none of us had ever met. Leave, I said, the word small but final. Leave. This was my home too, until 90 seconds ago. I'm owed 5 minutes to absorb that my entire existence is a forgery. All of you. Now. They shuffled out like guilty parishioners. Quincy's hand brushed my shoulder in passing, a wordless apology. Bridget's sobs echoed down the hall. Dustin swore under his breath with each step. Gordon lingered in the doorway. We did love you, he whispered. That part was real. I had no reply. The study closed in. Oil portraits of men and women whose cheekbones I would never inherit. Leather-bound ledgers celebrating triumphs that weren't mine. A family crest I'd just been erased from with the neat stroke of a scalpel. I walked out without ceremony, past the ancestors glaring from the corridor, past the kitchen doorframe scarred with pencil marks charting 4 childhoods, mine now a lie in graphite, past the baby grand where I'd butchered Chopin for recitals no blood relative had attended. The interstate to Milwaukee unspooled beneath tires that knew the route better than I did. Tears blurred the dashed lines somewhere past the county border until the windshield looked like a watercolor left in the rain. Melanie was hunched over a stack of essays when I let myself in. One glance and the red pen clattered from her fingers. "Roland, what is it?" "Gordon, did something happen to your father?" "They aren't my parents." The sentence tasted metallic. "I was adopted. They've known since the day I arrived. My siblings have known for years. I was the only one in the dark." She held me while the grief tore through, the kind that starts behind the sternum and detonates outward until your ribs feel hollowed by shrapnel. "You're still you," she murmured into my hair hours later, limbs knotted together under the quilt. "Still the guy who stays late at the clinic to tube-feed orphaned raccoons. Still the volunteer who shows up every Saturday with coffee for the staff. Still the man who quotes The Princess Bride in the produce aisle. They didn't plant any of that inside you. But who am I without the name?" I asked the ceiling at 3 a.m. "If I'm not Roland Thornfield, then what's left?" "You're the person I chose," she said, fierce and certain. "Everything else is footnotes." Anger arrived with sunrise, hot and clarifying. It flared while I measured coffee grounds and stared at the diploma on the wall. Roland Thornfield, DVM. Even the parchment was complicit. If the Thornfields could bury this for 3 decades, what else had they interred? Who were the people whose DNA threaded through my cells? Why had they surrendered me? Did they ever wonder what became of the infant they signed away? Were they breathing somewhere, maybe with other children who shared my cowlick or my trick of reciting area codes like poetry? "I have to locate them," I told Melanie over oatmeal neither of us tasted. "My real parents. I need the origin story they erased." She folded her hand over mine. "Then we hunt, whatever it costs." The lead came from Mrs. Kowalski, whose ancient tabby had been my insulin patient for 24 months. Over the exam table she mentioned her brother, missing since Reagan was president, until a PI named Chester Pike tracked him to a bait shop in Oregon. Chester's office perched above a noodle house on Mitchell Street, reachable by stairs that groaned like they resented the climb. The man himself was 70, thick through the chest, eyes the color of river stone and twice as sharp. "Parent searches are a gamble," he cautioned, voice gravel softened by something that might have been kindness. "Sealed files, reluctant subjects, truths uglier than ignorance. You prepared for any of it?" "I've been lied to for 32 years, I said, sliding the retainer across his desk. "I'm done with surprises I didn't choose." He weighed me for a long beat, then pocketed the bills. $200 a day plus gas and motel coffee. I'll need every scrap you have, which sounds like almost nothing, and permission to lean on any Thornfield paperwork you can pry loose. I have 3 days of facts and a lifetime of questions. They claim my mother was a pregnant teenager who couldn't cope. Could be another fabrication. Adopted when? 3 months old. December 92. So born early September. He scribbled in a notebook that looked older than I was. Private placement. They mentioned an agency, but private usually means attorneys. Paper leaves footprints. Your folks used Jerome Blackstone out of Philly for everything back then. Chester's brows lifted. "Blackstone's still alive, still lawyering at 80-something. We start there. I leave tomorrow. I'm riding with you." "That's not protocol." "I'm not a client. I'm the case. They stole my history. I'm not waiting in Milwaukee while someone else digs it up." He studied me again, then gave a single nod. "You ride shotgun, you follow orders. If I say stay in the truck, you stay. Some skeletons bite." His handshake was calloused iron. Descending those stairs, the scent of sesame oil chasing me, I felt a spark I hadn't known since the study imploded. Direction. I was going to unearth the people who began me, even if the ground collapsed beneath whatever remained of my life. The drive to Philadelphia swallowed 12 hours and every rest stop vending machine between here and there. Chester insisted on limping around each concrete plaza to keep his knee from locking. Blackstone AS firm squatted in a tired brownstone flanked by a laundromat and a bail bondsman whose neon flickered like a bad heartbeat. The receptionist, silver hair, glasses mended with tape, looked startled anyone still sought the old man. "He hasn't taken a new file in years," she protested. We're not new, Chester said, flashing his license. We're ancient history. Jerome Blackstone was parchment stretched over bone, liver-spotted hands trembling as he flipped through Chester's credentials. The office smelled of yellowed paper and ghosts of Cuban cigars. The Thornfield placement, he said once we explained. His voice carried the authority of a man who'd outlived his own obituaries. I remember. Closed adoption, expedited, hush-hush. The couple insisted on absolute privacy. We need the birth parents' identities, I said. Leaning so far forward, the chair creaked. Blackstone's roomy gaze settled on me. You're the child. I'm 32. You'll always be the child in that file. I took care of the adoption personally. The young woman who gave birth had laid out her demands with chilling precision. The new parents needed wealth, existing kids, and a promise of total silence. No letters, no visits, no trace. Chester leaned forward in the creaky office chair. You still have the paperwork? Blackstone didn't answer right away. His gaze drifted to the rain-streaked window. Then he rose like a man carrying decades on his shoulders. He crossed to a dented metal cabinet that smelled of rust and old paper. My old man said never discard a file, he muttered, tugging open a drawer. Dust danced in the weak light as he lifted out a bulging manila envelope. Sooner or later, ghosts knock. He spread the contents across the desk with reverent care. Infant mail, delivered 3rd September 1992. Jefferson Memorial. Mother. Penelope, just that, no middle name, on the surrender form. But Blackstone had dug deeper. Penelope Vance, 19, no father listed. A second sheet slid free. Bank envelopes, crisp sequential hundreds, $50,000 total. Cash always raised flags, Blackstone said. Clean bills, straight from a vault. Someone paid for speed and silence. Chester's phone flashed as he photographed every page. Her last known address? Philly Row House, 3 months post-delivery. After that, gone. Holiday card returned. Addressee unknown. Blackstone nudged the entire folder across the blotter. I'm closing shop in 30 days. Take it. Call it tying up loose ends. 2 weeks on, I was elbow-deep in a golden retriever's abdomen, excising a grapefruit-sized mass, when my phone buzzed against the steel counter. Chester. Tell him I'm busy, I said through the mask. He says it can't wait. My assistant hit speaker. Roland, you sitting? I'm holding retractors. Talk. I found her. Penelope Vance. Breast cancer took her 5 years back. She left instructions with a Manhattan firm. Sealed envelope. Open only if her son came asking. The room tilted. Read it. Chester's voice cracked. Your father is Mitchell Cray. The name hit like a mallet. Mitchell Cray, Cray Industries, shipping empire, Forbes fixture, political dynasty. The letter spilled the rest. Summer intern 19, older executive, 28, already married, already terrified. Hush money, closed adoption, quarterly reports disguised as contract reviews. Does he know I exist? I asked, voice thin. He's always known. The meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday in Chicago, top floor of a tower that caught the sun like a blade. Mitchell Cray stood when I entered, and the mirror shock was instant. Same pale green irises, same square jaw, same restless fingers tapping mahogany. Penelope was luminous, he said, the words heavy. I was ambitious and faithless. When she told me, I wrote a check and prayed the problem vanished. You watched me anyway. A nod. Thornfield Pharma was bleeding cash in '99. I needed eyes on you. Gordon needed a lifeline. Everyone won. Except when Patricia decided I was a liability. Mitchell's mouth tightened. 6 months ago, she connected dots. Old photos, a careless remark. She wanted money, guarantees you'd never surface. I refused to let her weaponize you, so you funded my exile again. No. He turned to the city below. I funded your future, the clinic lease, the scholarship. Every pro bono case you take, my Shell Foundation. I laughed, bitter. I thought I'd earned those. You earned the skill. I just removed the obstacles. We stared across 32 years of distance. I won't hide, I said. Your wife? Your kids? They deserve the truth. His shoulders sagged. Mitchell Jr.'s campaign launches in 90 days. One leak and it's over. Then we control the leak. The compromise was uneasy but honest. Private acknowledgement, no press. Rebecca Cray took the news with a wry smile. The animal rescue donations always puzzled me. Mitchell's allergic to fur. Mitchell Jr. paced, strategist to the bone. We spin it. Prodigal brother, heartwarming reunion. I can work with that. The twins, Sarah and Samuel, peppered me with questions about veterinary school. Catherine, 21 and fearless, demanded driving lessons. The Thornfields crumbled when Cray pulled every contract. Patricia's single call was slurred with gin and rage. You ruined us. You sold me first, I answered and hung up. Quincy, Bridget, Dustin, they reached out one by one, ashamed, rebuilding. Dustin moved into my spare room, 90 days sober, learning to draw blood from cats. Eleanor Cray, 93, summoned me to the family estate. She studied my face, then pressed a porcelain cheek to mine. Penelope had your eyes. Gentle soul. You inherited the best part. Melanie and I married in May beneath a dogwood tree. Chester stood beside me. Mitchell walked me down the aisle, eyes wet. Patricia watched from the curb, soaked by spring rain, a silhouette I finally released. The $50,000 check arrived framed in cheap plastic. I hung it beside the infant photo from the adoption file. Beneath it, a brass plate. Truth outvalues any currency. I filed the name change last month, Roland Cray. The Thornfields' cease and desist was answered with a photocopy of my new license and a post-it. Sincerely, your former obligation. My practice hums. 3 vets, 2 techs, a waiting room full of wagging tails. Every animal whose owner can't pay walks out healed, bill marked courtesy of a friend. Family isn't the signature on a birth certificate or the balance in a trust. It's the hand steadying your scalpel when the past detonates mid-surgery. It's the brother who learns to wrap a bandage, the grandmother who remembers your mother's laugh, the father who cries, giving you away a second time, this time with pride. If you've ever stood outside a life that didn't fit, know the door you're afraid to open leads to the people who already saved you a seat. Hit like if a single truth ever rewrote your story. Share it with someone still searching. Comment below, what lie did you outgrow and who helped you stand in the light? Subscribe for more lives unboxed, one secret at a time. You are not the silence someone paid for. You are the voice that finally speaks. And that is everything.